New Nigeria Foundation.
Touching lives, making a difference, building a country, making it good for everyone. Supporting agriculture, youth development, health institutions, life-giving projects everywhere. Come and help me see.
New Nigeria Foundation, building a new Nigeria through partnerships.
I'm going to go on to the second question for panelists, and I'm going to go back to Laide. How can different stakeholder groups benefit from adopting participatory stakeholder method? I know that different people joining us today, some are government officials, some are CSOs, some from private sector. So we would like to look at how the different stakeholders can benefit. Well, please talk about your experience from the CSO perspective, and maybe you would also want to say a bit about how the academic community and research institutions can also benefit from using the participatory stakeholder evaluation method.
Thank you. How can CSOs benefit by using PSE? I think in undertaking the evaluation of NNF as a civil society organization, it helps us to display a high level of transparency and accountability with our stakeholders. You know, CSOs are usually in the forefront of advocacy in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability. I think adopting the participatory stakeholder evaluation approach helps to actually show that we are walking the talk. We're displaying transparency and accountability in our operations, because bringing people who are external stakeholders to come in and evaluate your system says a lot about your transparency. And NNF, one of our 5 core values is transparency and accountability. So it was us living what we preach. So I think that's something CSOs can learn from. And then the PSE also encourages participatory decision-making process, because putting everybody out together in a room, looking at your internal processes, looking at your vision, looking at your mission, looking at what you have done over a 15-year period, gives an opportunity for a sound evaluation of your system. So it helps people to help you reach decisions in terms of how to move forward, what you need to change, what you need to continue doing, what you need to improve on. And then the fact that it involved even non-programmatic staff helped to bring some level of inclusion into our operations. So, and it helped to show the whole world the kind of egalitarian leadership that was practiced in NNF and that's still being practiced in NNF. So it's helped to encourage a participatory decision-making process, and it's also ensured that in evaluating NNF using the PSE, we had many meetings that helped people to impute into the process. So it wasn't a question of NNF had decided what they want to do and they brought people in. No, we had preparatory meetings, we had planning workshops, and everybody jointly agreed in terms of what objectives are we going to achieve at the end of the day, what themes do we really want to include in the evaluation, and it opened us up. So it added to the credibility of the Nigeria Foundation that we could open our doors for people to actually do some kind of evaluation of our systems in terms of how we operate. I think it was good for us as a civil society organization, and it showed that we do not just have transparency and accountability as a core value, we're actually living it. Then it also helped to engender inclusion. Everybody had a stake. It gave everybody a sense of belonging and a sense of ownership. It gave people who were involved, especially the external stakeholders, a kind of sense of self-worth in terms of the operations of New Nigeria Foundation. So I think it was good that we adopted that approach, and it shows that we are really a credible organization. Then in terms of how academic community or research institutions can integrate PSE, I think the use of PSE approaches is important for one, guiding local decision-making, two, promoting implementation of effective interventions and addressing emerging issues. So when you bring people in, they actually have an opportunity to look at the whole process and proffer solutions in terms of how to move forward. And if we are going to advocate that the academic community and research institutions integrate PSE, it is important that there is some kind of interrelationship between TAO and GAM, so that in designing the research, it is important that those who are going to use the skills, those who are going to use this method are sure that their wants, their needs are being programmed into the development of the curriculum for these research institutions, so that people who actually go through these programs in the university, when they come out and say, I have gone through a course in participatory stakeholder evaluation, those that are going to work for would actually, the needs that they have as users of this evaluation method have been taken into consideration in training these people. So it is important when we are going to do this advocacy for that inclusion, that we talked about getting the people who are eventually going to use the methodology to sit together with the academic institution in terms of designing, in terms of agreeing what pedagogical strategy to use to ensure that at the end of the day, the graduates come out and meet the needs of those who will use the evaluation method. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go back to Mr. Daibo now. Mr. Sam Daibo, kindly share your experience from the private sector perspective. How did it benefit your organization? How did the PSE method, how do you think it will benefit, let's be general now, how do you think the PSE will benefit the private sector as a sector?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So let me start off by saying, look, it's not how did it benefit, how does it continue to benefit us? Because for us, we found it as a very valuable tool or a process for measuring the impact of our CSIs or corporate social investments, which we do under our corporate social responsibility portfolio. And that's one. And it also, as a company, help us to appreciate at deeper levels the impact of our community engagement model, which we, like I said, introduced onto the platform into the space since 2005. And over the years, at the end of every 3-4 years, we do an evaluation of that process and keep improving. And I can tell you, as a company, that from what was seen in 2005, when we introduced that model to what we have today, is a big difference. And that's because of the process we followed in evaluating the model, and also applying the learnings from the evaluation into building the next generation of the GMOUs. I mean, just as a way of commenting, and that if you look at the current host community component of the PIB as it constitutes today, a chunk of it actually is modeled after the GMOU model that was generated from within Chevron, and also because of the evaluation process that were followed, you've seen the model that seemed to work pretty well for the industry. So the short answer to your question basically is this: one, the model or the PSE enables us to, one, have a deeper understanding of what's the impact of our investments or the impact of our engagement is from the perspective of stakeholders we engage with, and also from the company. And so that enables us also to respond in terms of our decisions in looking at our social impact. Again, us also looking at also business impact, because when we put these social investments or put this community engagement strategies forward, it's basically to meet two things: one, to meet our business objective, and also to meet the social objective. And there's a social objective, which is basically to improve the quality of livelihood, or quality of living, or relationship of well-being of communities that are neighboring to our operations. So if we run that process, we want to be sure that yes, when we follow a process as elaborate and as detailed as the participatory stakeholder evaluation, it enables us to understand, have a better sense of what stakeholders are thinking, how stakeholders are using, how they're engaging in that space of both our investments or in terms of our community engagement strategy. So once you have a good sense of what that is and build trust, one of the things that we've seen that has come out through this process for us over the years is what we call the unintended benefits of this process is the trust and the level of trust that's been built over the years through using these models, because at times like that there's engagement and then the other stakeholders who ordinarily from the other side of the fence think that as a company, you're too rigid, you're too structured in your decisions and your processes. So when we engage in this process of participatory stakeholder evaluation and they see that, yes, we're genuinely, as a company, interested in improving the quality of livelihoods, including quality of life in those communities, there's a sense of say, yeah, so we understand you better, we understand you as a company better, we know why you do what you do, we see that you do these things for the good, because they're the good things to do, they're nice things to do, they're the good things to do, because it's good to do them. You're not just doing them as something that we just have to do because we are a company just to do it. We do it because it's a good thing to do. And for us, that's a key benefit for us as a company. One of the things too I've seen as benefits from this process is the institutional memory. Dr. Dara spoke a little to it. We as a company have benefited, continue to benefit from that because in this whole process, we have our team members who participate in this process, who are also in there. And so when they start to engage the community thereafter, they own it, they have it, they know what it is. They build personal relationships with stakeholders, both at government, NGO, and the community level. I mean, today I speak in the space of CSR and CSI, largely because of the experiences we've been able to garner in using this participatory stakeholder evaluation process. So thanks. That's what I'd like to share at this point on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daibo. Before I call on Dr. Dara to share his own experience about what he feels about how government functionaries and donors can benefit from the use of the method, I'd like to also engage the audience. What do we think? I see more than half of us are familiar with this method. What do we think? How do we think politicians, policy makers, those in that space of making decisions in the policy or regarding policy issues, how do we think they can utilize this method more effectively, particularly, as we approach an election period in the next couple of years, so how do politicians, what do we think? Let's share our thoughts. So I'll go on back to Dr. Dara. Dr. Dara, please kindly share your thoughts about how you think government functionaries and donors, how do you think they can benefit from the use of this method?
Okay, thanks again, Bumi. Let me start with donors. Many of us will know that PEND is a hybrid organization. We are both an implementer and a donor, but we're a very small donor. So that does not mean that donors that are listening now will not give funds to us or programs when we come asking. So having said that, we know that most donors have an objective of promoting participatory development and involving stakeholders groups in evaluation will help to further that objective. And an effective way for stakeholders to contribute to the achievement of donors' objectives is to directly be involved in the evaluation process of programs and projects. The stakeholders' role will include things like participation in the planning, all these steps or the stages that Prof outlined earlier on in his presentation, in the planning stage, in framing the critical evaluation questions, in data collection and in analysis of data. all of these are stages that will involve various stakeholder groups, you know, in a participatory evaluation process that is being instituted by donors. If stakeholders are involved this way, then those will enable them to participate directly in the assessment of the relevance and the performance and the success of the programs or projects. And of course, they will take part in recommending how to improve the quality of the current or future interventions, you know, that the donors are, you know, are thinking of. So it's very critical that donors involve all various stakeholder groups in order to get a wide variety of feedback and viewpoints about how programs are working, the effectiveness of these programs, and the relevance of such programs. Then I'll move on quickly to government. Government officials can use the participatory stakeholder evaluation methods in reaching out to the grassroots, you know, the critical stakeholders involved, and also including the grassroots, you know, and that way, government officials can seek feedback on the performance of the programs and projects, or even policies of government. And this promotes inclusiveness in making decisions about things that will affect the lives of these people. And it also promotes citizens' engagement, you know, in governance. So what we're saying in essence is that the adoption of the participatory stakeholder evaluation methods will promote good governance through increasing accountability, through increasing transparency, and it also helps build trust between government and the citizens. One thing that is in short deficit in Nigeria these days is that there's a trust deficit in the current administration. We've always been having that in the past. And that is because there's not enough engagement that is going on between the citizens and the government. Government is not seeking feedback on how the policies is affecting the lives of those that are being governed. You know, so adopting this method will help government to get feedback on the needs and yearnings and priorities of the citizen, and learnings and outcomes from an evaluation process can be the basis for planning new projects or for the redesign of existing projects. So let me leave it there for now, Bumi. Back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I see two people have responded, and I'm going to call you, if you don't mind, to share your opinion. I know you've shared your opinion in the chat box, but I'm going to call you, my very special friend and sister, Toyin Akpan, and who else? Okay, and Lydia. So please, Mrs. Toyin Akpan, can you please share your thoughts with us? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've really learned quite a lot from the presenters and also from you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our thoughts. I think various governments, and I'll use Lagos State as an example, has tried to implement participatory evaluation as a strategy for open governance. However, just like Dr. Akala said, I think honesty and integrity, willingness to be open and transparent has been the problem most government officials or governments in general have in adopting participatory evaluation strategies. My suggestion is we already have in Lagos State town hall meetings, which over the past 3 governors have tried to sustain at the community levels. That is a very good platform that can be used to implement this strategy. And so we already have the civil society at that space. We already have the community openly participating at that space. We can actually remove politicking out of the space and bring in transparency and openness into the process, and then include more stakeholders that have been excluded from that process. Because if you get to the town hall meetings, everybody is there living the community, but maybe the policymakers are not there. Maybe those who are actually given the right or the contract to implement some of these activities are not also in attendance when government is meeting the people. And so if that is open up, the stakeholders' involvement is opened up a lot wider, that may be a good strategy to go. And I also reflected at the political scene and platform, and I thought, we already have open sessions at either the House of Assemblies at the state, the House of Representatives, and then we also have at the Senate. And these open sessions are looking at different specific projects or different policies or laws that are being implemented. So we already are used to this. However, some of the sessions are rowdy when it comes to engagement with civil society or when it comes to engaging with the community generally. Just like now, the experience of people who attended the constitutional review or hearings have been complaining about the openness and the need to embrace conflicting and contentious views. If this strategy is taken up in government, I believe that government will gain a whole lot more in reflections and best strategies to be able to build trust and also meet needs at the community level. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for the opportunity to hear.
Thank you for your feedback, Caleb Wanga. I was calling on Lydia Indieze because she had made a comment or, contributed to this discussion in the chat box. So if Lydia is on, please unmute yourself and share with us.
Hi. Thank you, Bumi. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. And I must say, I really appreciate this opportunity. And thanks to all those who've been talking to us. I've gained a lot personally. And just very quickly on the question you had asked, and our sister before me had just spoken. I just brought out two things to myself. I said, yes, we have a lot of town hall meetings. We have engagements, but the talks that we have in those forums, so we really listen to them. We gather the people, we spend the time, hear them talk, but we don't take actions on the things they say. That's where we think also have a problem. So the government comes, does the wishy-washy, does the advertising, everybody knows there's a town hall meeting, but at the end of the day, nothing is taken out of that place. Otherwise, we will have situations where our politicians are able to come back to the drawing board to those same people and say, look, we had a meeting on the 30th, and these were the things we came out with. This is what we have done about it. Please evaluate. Does it meet what we agreed? Is it in line with what we are saying? Because if you're doing a development and it's not benefiting me, then it's not useful to me. I could see it there as a good elephant project, but it's worthless as far as I'm concerned. So if our politicians begin to think straight, one, integrity. What do I want to project? I am here for 2, 3, 4 years. What do I want to be remembered for? What am I leaving behind? I am still a part of this community. I may have the opportunity now to be a leader, but tomorrow I'm going to be back in my own house, plying the roads I didn't do, walking on the streets without lights, and it's going to tell back on me and my children. So let's think, let the politicians begin to think beyond themselves and the quick gains of collecting monies and stashing them abroad, and begin to think of how we can corporately develop our own so that others can come and feel good spending holidays in Port Harcourt or even in Diop for that matter. So what we are preaching is this: stakeholders engagement is so important. Feel the pulse of the people. How do they feel about this? What do they really want? What will encourage development for them? What will help their small industries to grow? Make these things available with the taxes you collect from them, and they will bless you forever. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lydia, for your very passionate thoughts. Thank you very much. I'm going to just give room for one more comment before I go back to our panelists, and then if we have enough time, I'll take other comments. I see more people are making more comments. But I'll ask Caleb Wanga from Kenya to please express or share his thoughts with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Olatunde, for the opportunity. And I'm very happy and congratulations everybody, Professor Jibola and the team for organizing this kind of engagement. Participatory evaluation is key, but just the way Lydia, you have heard the tone the Lydia have spoken. Sometimes these public processes are abused. And even in Kenya, sometimes they are badly abused when people are just called to show it's done for public relations exercise. But how important is participatory evaluation? It helps to streamline even projects. And two, that is in the public processes. In the civil society organizations, we have internal evaluations and external evaluations. All these things you realize are intended to improve delivery of services or to enhance the kind of products at the end of any process. But how do we make sure that they are well conceived? Otherwise, public participatory evaluation sometimes, like in Kenya, is done as a public relations exercise. So I've really listened a lot to presentations, and I believe that this kind of engagement will help us improve on our work on a daily basis. Thank you so much, Olatunde.
Okay, thank you so much, Caleb Wanga from Kenya. It's so good to have you join us today. Thank you for your very important thoughts. I want to believe that we have some government officials participating, and I believe that they're listening. This has been very good. I'm going to go back to our panelists. I will give more opportunities for participants to share their thoughts later on. Well, I'm going to ask again our panelists how their organizations have benefited from using the participatory stakeholder method. This time, I want them to share just one experience, just one point each. So I'm going to go back to Laide. Please share with us just one experience or one example of how NNF has benefited from using PSE method.
Thank you, Bumi. One experience. Well, I think as a program implementer, we've had a number of benefits, but if I need to zero in on one, at times you may believe you are doing so well, you believe you are doing what you're supposed to do, and your stakeholders may not have that impression. So I think after 15 years, when you bring people you have worked with, people who used to work for you, people of whom you have served, to do an evaluation of your organization, it gives you an opportunity to gather their perceptions about us. So when we had that evaluation, that's about 6 years ago, we got people's perception of us as an organization in terms of our vision. Are we actually living our vision, our mission? Are we achieving our mission? Are processes good enough? Are we meeting their needs as partners? Do they think the strategies we have adopted implementing projects are working? What do they think of our staff in terms of response when we're implementing projects? So it gave us an avenue to get feedback from our external stakeholders in terms of what we as NF was doing well, what we needed to improve. It enabled us to know their perception of us in terms of where are our strengths really, where do they think that we were weak, and these discussions, this hard truth helped us to improve our processes. So it enhanced our capacity to fulfill our mission and vision better, and to get the best out of the partnership arrangements that we already had going. I think that's one major benefit that we got as an implementer using participatory evaluation method. Thank you.
Thank you, Laide. I'm going to go over to Dr. Dara, and then I'll get back to Mr. Sam Daibo. Dr. Dara, 1 point, please. Just tell us something that PIN Foundation has benefited from using the PSE method? Just 1 point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bumi. I think if there's anything that is of the greatest importance to us from the last PSR that we did, I mean, with the Participatory Stakeholder Evaluation, it was the confirmation of the continued relevance of our mission in the Niger Delta region. So it also helps us to determine our area of priorities. Our strategy derives from our mission. The last review that we did in 2019 actually resulted in the redesign of our program strategy. So from 4 program pillars, we moved down to 2 program pillars because the overwhelming feedback from the various stakeholder groups was the fact that, look, if you want to bring about transformational change in the Niger Delta region, then focus on 2 core pillars of economic development and peace building. The rest, advocacy and analysis and capacity building could be mainstreamed into these 2 core pillars, which was exactly what we have done. So that is the major outcome of the last review that we did. And of course, we didn't have to debate this, both with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, because we were all part of that process of decision making all along the way from start to finish. So that is one major benefit that I can list here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to go straight to Mr. Sam Daibo.
Yeah, so thanks. So for us, beyond the capacity building elements, which we continue to cherish, I think one of the key things that will benefit or will continue to benefit from this process, or from using this process, is the readiness and willingness of partners, particularly community stakeholders and other stakeholders who participate in the process, to take ownership of the outcomes and recommendations from those evaluation processes. Like I mentioned, we've gone through 5 times I've gone the evaluation of the GMOE model, for instance, and it has been tremendous improvements in terms of its effectiveness, its delivery, its governance, its systems, and then even its own the whole approach, and so the willingness of partners to quickly take on the recommendations and run with them. For us, it's a big learning and big benefit for us. I mean, if you look at it vis-a-vis the nature of relationships that you have typically between oil company, the extractive industry, and communities, you understand where we're coming from in terms of when we see this as a major gain for us as a company that's in that space, the readiness and willingness of that. And that's the reason why that happens is because participants goes to see the process. They see how some difficult questions are asked, and even when something's negative or perceived as negative, we come, and it's the willingness of the company to say yes, that's fact. We don't try to hide or deny or try to leave or accept it for what it is, and see a way to improve on the process. So that is for us is a big thing. So the willingness and then the ownership of the process for us are key learnings that we think continues to encourage us to use this process. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Daibo. We're going to be talking about challenges, and after that, I'm going to take 2 more questions out of the several questions that we have, and then we'll continue with the discussion. So I'm going to be asking our panelists about the challenges that they encountered when they used the method, because it sounds very exciting. It's been a very useful method. It's had a lot of positive impacts, but what were the challenges that you had when you were using that method? I'm going to start with Laide.
Thank you, Bumi. You know, we are a civil society organization, we're a non-governmental organization, so we do not have resources of our own. Our resources are held in trust for other people. So we do not have deep pockets of the private sectors like Chevron or the donors like PIND. So I think one major challenge we had was in terms of resources, especially financial resources. having to bring so many stakeholders together, we had to provide for the logistics of their participation. It took a lot in terms of financial resources. So one thing I would say is that in terms of resources, as an implementer or somebody who, or an organization that wants to adopt a participatory stakeholder evaluation method, you need to be mindful of budgetary allocation, because it takes a lot of funds, a lot of money to actually get stakeholders to participate throughout the process. And then it takes a lot of time to, so those two resources are things that you need to be mindful right from your planning stage. One, in terms of financial resources, as a civil society organization, you need to be sure that you can fund the participation of those you are bringing, because you're going to bring stakeholders who are not residents where you're located. There's the logistics that you need to fund. So you need to be mindful of that. And it can be huge for a civil society organization. In terms of time, the process takes a lot of time, right from your framing meetings, your preparatory meetings, your planning workshop, before you get the training done, people going to the field, it takes time. We need there to be sure that the stakeholders that we're bringing on board were willing to commit the time that was required to go through the whole process. So I think for us, the major challenge was funding, like I said, being a non-governmental organization, and then getting people to commit to spending so much time working on the project. So two things, stakeholders need to be willing to commit the time required to participate fully and effectively in the evaluation process, and the institution needs to be able to devote the financial resources that is required to fund the participation of the stakeholders. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go over to Mr. Sam Daibo. Kindly share with us just one challenge.
Okay, so let me share this with you. One of the things we found as a challenge really is, you know, this process requires you bring in different stakeholders, different literacy level, cultural biases, exposures, and all of that. You bring all those persons into one room, and you're looking at and defining a project and defining what the objective of an evaluation will be. And you're also analyzing data. People have different understanding, a different level of appreciation of what that is. And, you know, and then from the experts to the non-experts to the literate, somebody raised a question about how do you use this process for illiterate farmers. But they are stakeholders, so you bring them in. And so that becomes a challenge. How do you navigate that process of different people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different expectations and biases? How do you navigate all of that, all those emotions, those backgrounds, and work it and focus on the process that produces something that is beneficial to everybody? That for us is a challenge and also an opportunity, in which case, if you get a very good facilitator, that helps to navigate through that process very well. And then, of course, even in selecting presentations, and so we say yes. So let's say yes, we want to get community members to participate in this process. Who in the community? How do you select that person? How do you ensure that whoever you bring in doesn't bring, is not a domineering person who says, look, you know what, I have an agenda, and you have to run that agenda through and through. And then how do you manage that process? So that's in a sense, what we're saying here is there is the complication of bringing different people with different educational background, with different cultural background, with different expectations and different biases into this space and to manage the conversation very well. If you don't do that very well, then there's a chance that this whole thing will be drifted and then you start pursuing somebody's agenda without knowing it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daibo. I'm going to, before I call on Dr. Dara, I'm going to ask our participants again to respond to two other, which will be my last questions for this session before I take other questions from participants. I would like participants to share their thoughts on how we can, as a nation, as individuals, as institutions, how we can build forward better using the participatory stakeholder method. How do you think we can build forward better using the participatory stakeholder evaluation method? we all know that globally, we're all passing through the COVID-19 pandemic. And after the pandemic, we're hoping that the pandemic fizzles out soon enough, or at least we're hoping that it gets to a state where we can manage it better. Many countries will be going into the recovery phase. So going forward and building better, how do we think participatory stakeholder evaluation method can be used to help achieve that process of the recovery phase? And then we all know about the new normal. So is it possible, or are there likely to be changes in the way participatory stakeholder method is being done going forward? You know, we've talked about bringing a lot of stakeholders together and all of that. So I would like the participants to share their thoughts. You can raise your hand if you want to respond to that. But before then, let's take on Dr. Dara. Let him share at least one challenge that PIN Foundation experienced while they were using the participatory stakeholder evaluation method.
Thank you. I think Prof, during the course of his presentation, made the point quite succinctly about the scale and the experience of the facilitator. That is a very critical input into the process, because the quality of the outcome from participatory stakeholder evaluation method would depend on the quality of the facilitation of the entire process, especially given some of the scenarios that Sam just described, where we have different bunches of stakeholders from different places, different backgrounds, with different expectations and different biases. How do we manage all of this? And we do know also, even from Prof's presentation also, that the skilled facilitators are not easily available. Skilled facilitators in terms of multi-stakeholder processes, skilled facilitators in terms of conflict management, in terms of capacity building, they are not easy to come by, because this is not a very, very familiar approach to evaluation, and it's not one that is being applied, readily. And how do we improve our skills and competencies is through ongoing application and regular application. You continue to build on existing knowledge and skills and proficiencies as we do it several times. So it was a major challenge. When we did our first review in 2014, we had to bring in an international consultant, to lead the facilitator, to lead that process, working with a national facilitator. But when we did it in 2019, we already had, skills available. So the facilitator that was selected was a national, who led the entire process. Facilitation is very important from the standpoint of, of looking at the volume and the magnitude of data that is generated from the various interviews. It's a qualitative process to a large extent. And how do we reduce the stakeholder viewpoints to key ideas without really losing the essence of what they are saying? I mean, you want to reduce about 700 pages of a report to something that is less than 100 or maybe 150 at most. That is a lot of, it takes a lot of skills and experience to manage that process, to be able to cut out the fat and focus on key ideas and what is important that the stakeholders are saying. I think I'll leave it there. And back to you, Bumi. Selecting the stakeholders, experienced facilitators is always a challenge. And I think we'll still continue to face this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Akala. I have two people who have responded or who have indicated interest in responding to the questions I just asked about building forward better. I'm delighted to have Ms. Yamisi Razomkuti on board. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us. Please unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Good afternoon, Mark. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Anything Prof. Ajibola is involved in, it will be very, very interesting. So I try not to miss it. And I have not been let down. And the various presentations we've had. I mean, I cannot say how important, there's no way I can express how important stakeholder engagement is and participatory monitoring for development. Because unless there is a process where everybody has their eye on the ball and everybody is included and everybody has an opportunity to be part of the process, you are never likely to get successful outcomes. There were two key important exercises I was actually part of. One was when Governor Fashola was in charge of Lagos State, and he organized monitoring, evaluation, physical monitoring of projects around Lagos State. And it engendered a lot of, not just inclusion and stakeholder understanding of the project, but it created ownership, as many of you have said. And even when things are not quite right, when people own the process, they are more likely to want to be part of the solution and see it as their asset, which needs to be protected, and where they can also engage in improvement. And the other thing was I was the World Bank consultant on stakeholder engagement for Lagos Water Corporation. And, well, the challenge of government, I think, is also lack of cohesion, because there are many platforms for monitoring, but there isn't a central thing. To go to the Lagos State website or other government websites in Nigeria, you are not going to find a cohesive platform where you can tailor and submit your challenges and have positive responses, speedy responses. And it's the same thing when I was working on this project with Lagos State. And if you go to the website, it's all rather confusing. And part of the project is also to develop tools for citizens to engage, where they can go online, where they can go use their phones. Various tools were made available, but the challenge is that the people themselves were not responding as well as they could. And my people don't seem to have the tenacity and the patience to follow through on their complaints until there's some resolution. So I think we all need to work both on the demand and the supply side, work with government to assist them to develop a more coherent, a more cohesive platform for engagement and stakeholder and open government, those kinds of tools and instruments. And also work with citizens to help them to understand the importance of engagement. The fact that sounding off on social media may relieve some tension, but it actually doesn't solve the problem. And the insecurity and other dangers that we see around us now is a direct result of Nigerians not having been included in the process of governing their nation. So like I said, both sides need to do something. Government needs to do more. Citizens also need to know that they have the power, they have the tools, they have the opportunity, and it's up to them to engage more effectively. It's a two-way street, and we can't leave it one side to the other. So these are just my brief comments. Thank you so much, Mr. Ajibola, for this opportunity once again to ginger us to the importance of participatory monitoring and engagement. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank Thank you, Ms. Yemisi Ransom-Kuti. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. COEG, are you on? Please unmute yourself. I recognize your hand, Chikeze Okpara. I'll call you shortly. COEG, kindly unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Prof, for this session. It's been very helpful and educating. One of the questions you asked, what's going on in my mind is, one of the questions you asked is, how can government benefit from PSEs? And one of the things I've observed is that because of the structure of our polity, it tends to have a situation where the winner takes it all. And therefore, once you have a party in government, the governor or the president decides what happens. And therefore, even if you do PSC and do town halls, because it is a structure that is designed to support partisanship, they often tend not to carry other non-party stakeholders in the outcome and in the implementation of the programs. And so you find that those who get contracts, who get to get involved in government implementations are partisan members and loyal partisan members. And amongst that, you find dissensions. You find people who are not happy with government programs. And then, unfortunately, if you have a situation like what we have, you have a worse situation to go for it. So that's one area the implementers of PSE can look at how that can happen. But again, this probably is a structural thing with our constitution, and that needs to be looked into. Thank you.
Thank you very much, COEG, for your comments. I'm going to call Fisayo and Chikeze shortly, and I'm also going to be calling our panelists for their final thoughts in a short while. But before then, I'd like us to take the third poll. The third poll, and the question is, do you think you have gained more knowledge about participatory stakeholder evaluation method? Do you think you have gained more knowledge about participatory stakeholder evaluation? Please respond to the chat and I'll give us a few seconds to do that. Okay, so let's see the results. Oh, great. This is so good to know. It's good to know that everyone, including myself, learned a lot more about participatory stakeholder evaluation. Okay, thank you everyone for responding to the poll. I'm now going to go to Fisayo and then I'll call Chikeze before I take the final thoughts from our panelists. We have about 2 or 3 more questions. We'll see if we can take those questions. We'll try to, give some time for that to happen. Fisayo, please unmute yourself. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. My regards to everyone and to all the panelists. It's been a good session. Well, I've made my comment, and which is to say that it's an understatement, and Nigeria actually needs a PSC urgently, going by the challenges we have in the country at this moment. It's a process I never thought could actually be applied to our situation, but listening into all the presentations and thinking about that process, I think it's indeed what we need at this moment. Case in point is the Senate's ongoing review. A lot of people who have commented have mentioned it, and we can always see that it's just a partisan kind of review. I doubt if things are going to move beyond the talk show, as we normally have. Some of the challenges that we've highlighted, I think, is contextual. For example, for like a CSO, like Mrs. Adesoya mentioned, it could be financial. For an organization, like Chevron, it could be actually selecting the participants. So these challenges could be contextual when it comes to, starting off the process. I would like to make a suggestion to NNF and to, the partners. Maybe it's high time to build a curriculum on PSE to be introduced for students of social work, sociology, and students who are into public policy. I think it's a very vital tool that we need at this point in time in our nation. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Fisayo. It's so good to hear from you again. Thank you for joining us today. And yes, I do agree with you. I know that we have academic institutions and research institutions joining in as well. So I'm sure that that might also be something they might be interested in. Thank you, Chikeze Okpara, for your patience. Please unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, thank you, Bumi. Thank you so much. My thoughts on this is, yes, we are talking about participatory evaluation, but one, I want to take it from a very different angle. Even before we get to evaluation, for government, there is something I feel that is always missing, and that is why it seems government interventions at the end has little or no effect when it comes to people feeling that presence, and that is more of the government. I mean, this is my recommendation. It's more of the government understanding the need for problem analysis, which will include the people. In fact, it's not waiting till evaluation to start, involving the people. I mean, it starts from the intervention design, where the people has to also be, brought into the whole situation to understand the core problem that would perhaps have a sprinkle effect that addresses other issues that can contribute to change in the society. And understanding the people also in mapping stakeholder, identifying the actual stakeholders in participatory evaluation. And that will also solve a lot of issues. I have concern with that in terms of government, even, engaging the people. And you see, a lot of times what we see is that even when you do these things, you see that the effects of that evaluation, the effects of that intervention, even when you carry out participatory evaluation, will not be felt. I feel we should encourage the government, or have a design for the government, to start looking at involving the people from even the project design, even before getting to evaluation itself. So that is just my thoughts on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chikeze Okpara. Thank you very much. Very useful thoughts there. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. I'm going to be taking the last 3 questions, and then we'll ask the panelists to share their final thoughts with us. I'm going to be starting with Laide. So one of the questions we got in the chat box is, what is your recommendation as regards time interval between the PSE report, when the PSE report is released and shared with the relevant stakeholders? Also, is it mandatory to share PSE report to all interviewers in the course of data collection? So, Mrs. Adesoya, can you respond to that question? I have 2 other questions that I'm going to be asking Dr. Akala and Mr. Samdaibu.
Okay, thank you, Bumi. is it compulsory to share the reports of your PSE with stakeholders? I think it is important that you share the outcome of your evaluation. Many of those that you will get to speak with on the field would have their inputs, they would raise issues, they will ask questions. The expectation is that, and you know, these are issues that affect them directly as individuals. So the expectation is at the end of the evaluation, when you are done, they should get a feedback in terms of what are the next steps. Though it's a participatory stakeholder evaluation, it's not all stakeholders are involved in that process. So for those other stakeholders that are not involved in the evaluation process, I believe that it is important that they get to know what the outcome of the evaluation is and what are the next steps. So that by the time they get to hear information about this is what we're going to do next, it will not be strange to them. And then it's a question of what have you promised in the process of your interaction during the evaluation. If for any reason they have asked you or they have complained that maybe in the past they did not get information in terms of next steps or what came out of the evaluation, and you have gone ahead to make a commitment that you're going to share the results of evaluation with them, I think you should keep that word, you should keep that promise. So for whatever it is worth, once you have made a commitment that you're going to share the outcome of evaluation with your stakeholders, it is important that as soon as the report is complete, you have taken the decision in terms of next steps, the recommendations have been agreed, you should go back and let them know the outcome. Two reasons. One, you are keeping your credibility intact, and then you are building bridges for next time you need to interact with those people. They are likely to be welcoming because you have worked with them in the past and you fulfilled your promises. So I think it is important that we keep our promises, and it is important for them to know the outcome of the evaluation process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laide. I have two more questions. I'm going to throw it open to Dr. Dara and Mr. Sam Daibo. So please feel free to respond to any of the questions you would like. I have a question from Omori John. He says, in promoting rural economy via agribusiness, how does PSE apply? In promoting rural economy via agribusiness, how does PSE apply? Dr. Dara, Mr. Sam Daibo, anyone can respond to that question. The second question is, what are the most critical factors of the planning workshop? As I understand it, it's very important to get this right if we must have a successful fieldwork and eventual reporting. And that question is from Lydia Ndieze.
So this is Sam. So let me attempt to answer the question on the value or the process for the planning workshop. I mean, from our own experience, you know, the planning workshop actually sets the tone, and because that's when you, I mean, as stakeholders or all those who are participating in that process, that's where you want to define the objectives of the evaluation. What are the expectations? What do you hope to achieve with this evaluation? And then when you do that, then what do you expect? What do you want to do with the outcome of the evaluation? Is it for the purpose of process improvement? Is it for purposes of identifying what opportunities are in terms of the project or program that you're running? Or is it for the purpose of just for advocacy? Whatever, you define all of that. And it's very important that all stakeholders have alignment in that space. So once that also helps you to define, okay, if you're going to do that, then also there's a planning workshop. You also plan about, okay, what kind of questions do you want to ask? What do you want to focus on? And then using the appreciative inquiry, which Lydia spoke to earlier on, is also a fundamental approach in using this model. Basically looking at what are the things that are working and build from there. Because the human tendency is that you ask people questions, the problem will tell you the problem first. But if you ask from the perspective of what is working, because no matter how terrible the system is, certain things are working. And so you want to find out what are those things that are working, what are those systems that are working within a broader perspective. And then you start up from that place and you get told into what the other things that may be opportunities for you to improve.
And so, again, that planning of workshop also provides opportunity for you to start. Okay, let's work in logistics of it. How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to make this happen? What are the themes of this whole planning workshop? So, for me, the summary of it all is it is key and very paramount that we get that planning workshop right, because that's where you get everybody on board. Everybody who is involved in that process usually in the PSE usually is presented at the planning workshop. So, like I say, it's a very first key step, and that's where most times all the stakeholders are meeting for the very first time. So, because you notice at the beginning when you're framing, it should be mainly the donor or whoever is wanting the evaluation done, and the facilitators who meet, and thereafter. So, the planning workshop is where all the stakeholders meet for the very first time. So, those are my thoughts at this point with regards to the question. On the one of agriculture, Dr. Dara does the team does a lot of agricultural stuff, so I'll defer that for him to answer. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sam Daibo. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Dara.
All right, thanks, Sam. Thanks, Bumi. I guess the person who asked that question is either an agriculturist or somebody that is working on agricultural development program. So let me start by saying that one of the speakers earlier on, Chikeze Okwara, actually spoke a lot to this question. The thing is, the PSE method has a basket of tools and approaches that are applicable to any development program, whether it's agro enterprises or pure agricultural development or any kind of social development program. It's applicable. So, what is the starting point of our analysis? As he rightly pointed out, I mean, Chikeze earlier on, that we don't need to wait till evaluation stage before we start applying these tools and techniques. We want to carry out a situation analysis. What is it that we are thinking about in terms of agricultural development promotion? What is the current situation? The point of emphasis is before you are, or in an attempt to answer that question, you want to consult with a broad range of stakeholders, either government or policy makers, service providers, donor agencies, real people that are involved, farmers and processors, and small business operators in that space. What are the issues? What are their priorities? You know, that will help in the design of any program, right? And once we're implementing the program, another way to apply these tools is in monitoring. You don't just send your M&E officers, you know, out there alone, but you want to involve the stakeholders in the monitoring process, which is often referred to as participatory monitoring. And periodically also, you want to carry out evaluation. So again, using these tools and approaches. So in essence, what we are saying is right from the planning stage through to implementation and to the end, when you are evaluating, or maybe the end of a phase, PSE tools and approaches and methods becomes applicable. The key thing is you want to involve stakeholders, as many of them as possible, and you make your decisions about the programs as broad-based as possible using stakeholder input. So I think that's essentially how we can use some of this PSE, or how we can apply the PSE method in designing agro development programs. And of course, Sam adequately covered the one on the planning workshop, so no need to talk about that again. Over to you, Bumi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dara. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. I'm going to be asking the panelists to share with us their parting shots or their final thoughts. But before then, I'm going to ask participants who have not shared their contact details with us to please do so. We'll be sharing the presentation as well as the video recording as requested by participants to us. So please share your contact details with us. For those who are joining us on our YouTube channel, please remember to drop your contact details with us as well. So parting shots from our panelists, I'll start with Mr. Sam Daibo.
Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity to share our own experience. Participatory stakeholder evaluation. It's been an interesting, and for us as a company, we find it to be extremely useful in managing our engagement, our relationship with our stakeholders, and also in managing our social investments. And it's something we'd like to encourage for others to continue to utilize. And I believe that for those of us who have participated in this session today, you found it useful. What we're trying to cover in the last 1.5 hours, that there's a whole body of knowledge, information around this that I would like to encourage that take time out to understand and use and get familiar with the process. Thank you very much, NNF, for putting us for having this and then having us on the panel. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sam Daibo. Mr. Sam Daibo is the area manager, policy, government, and public affairs field operations of Chevron Nigeria Limited. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Dr. Dara, kindly share your parting thoughts with us.
Okay, thanks again, Bumi. And again, as I said at the beginning, we think it's a privilege to be able to share this platform today, to share our own experiences in the use of participatory stakeholder evaluation methods. In conclusion, I think for us as development practitioners, the importance of PSE cannot be overemphasized. One of the challenges that we mentioned here today is the cost. That could be relatively more costly than the other approaches. Well, we should not be deterred. If we are genuinely interested in the impact of our programs or in the sustainability of these programs, then PSE is the way to go. And I'd like to respond to the one comment about availability of skills and pool of facilitators. Payne Foundation has a program that we call Capable under our capacity building program. Capable is capacity building for local empowerment, and we've been running some programs on M&A in the past. I think we could consider running a program under that, a program on the PSE, under that Capable program in future, because I believe we need to build a pool of expertise in the application of PSE methods in Nigeria. Thank you so very much, and I wish everyone a resounding success in the use of PSE methods in our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dara Akala, Executive Director of Foundation for Partnership Initiatives in the Niger Delta. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. And we look forward to Payne's integration of training on PSE as part of the Capable program. Thank you, sir. I would also like to say a very big thank you to Professor Obafemi Ajibola, Managing Director of New Nigeria Foundation. He was the one that took us through the training session in the morning. It was very robust. All 100% of the participants have confirmed that they have increased knowledge about participatory stakeholder evaluation. So it's been worth the while, I believe. Thank you very much, sir. We're grateful, sir. Then I would like to also say a very big thank you to Mrs. Laide Adesoya, Deputy Director and Head of Programs Department of New Nigeria Foundation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for sharing experiences about, sharing NNF's experiences on PSE. We've all learned a lot. Thank you very much. We're grateful. Thank you for your time. And to everyone on this platform, would like to say a very, very big thank you. You've been a great, great participant. I don't know how to say that. It's been a very participatory session. You've shared your thoughts, you've asked questions, we've all responded to the questions, and I think it's been very exciting for me. We're very grateful. New Nigeria Foundation is happy that all of us could participate in this, and we look forward to your participation in our future webinars. We are happy that the gLOCAL Evaluation Week this year has been a success, and we look forward to next year's gLOCAL evaluation. We also look forward to sharing information about other webinars organized by New Nigeria Foundation with everyone. If you would like to contact New Nigeria Foundation, we have put our information out there for us to see. So please feel free to reach out to us if you need to contact us. We would also be very happy to share more information about how we can help you if you are implementing your participatory stakeholder evaluation program, or if you are utilizing the method. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.
New Nigeria Foundation.
Touching lives, making a difference, building a country, making it good for everyone. Supporting agriculture, youth development, health institutions, life-giving projects everywhere.
Building a new Nigeria through partnership.